I've debated a long time if I even wanted to share this story. Every time I think about it, I get creeped out all over again. But a few years ago, our family experienced one of the scariest experiences I've lived in my nearly 37 years of life. Back in 2020, my oldest son had just turned 3, and up until this point, he had been an amazing sleeper. He was the type of kid who you can say, okay, it's time for bed, and he'd put himself right to sleep, soothe himself to sleep. He was a great sleeper. He'd sleep all through the night. I guess, kind of to backtrack, it's maybe mildly, well, I don't know that I want to include this doll at all into the story, and I don't know the role this doll plays in the story, or if it's just a coincidence, but at that time, we had just received a doll from my aunt that had been passed down in my family. Originally, it had belonged to my great-great-grandmother, and it cycled through every girl in our family. Everybody hated this doll. It's important to note. Everybody claims this doll was haunted. I didn't know how much I really believed that. Yes, the doll is creepy because it's an old creepy doll. But it ended up with us, and my oldest son did love this doll. He played with it all the time, talked with it all the time, and it was not long after he started interacting with this doll that all of this started happening. One night, he had a terrible nightmare. He was screaming, he was crying, won't go back to sleep. He needs me or my husband with him, so go back to lay down with him. And the whole time I'm laying with him, trying to put him back to sleep, trying to soothe him, he starts looking over my shoulder to the corner of his room. And I go to turn to see what he's staring at, and he stops me with his hand on my face and says, "No, mommy, don't look at him, he's really scary." And so, of course, I carry all of his stuff and bring it to our room, and we lay in our bed with mommy and daddy, but he's still not very settled. He still seems really shaken up. You know, we try to reassure him. We try to reassure him he's safe, he's with mommy and daddy now, but it won't shake the feeling. He says, I know I'm safe, I'm with mommy and daddy, but now he's staring at me from over there. And he points to the corner of our room. And this is just the beginning of a situation that went on for about a year. After this, almost every single night, he's having terrible nightmares. And it's getting to a point where he refuses to go into his room, even to play. If there's a toy in his room, he won't go in to grab it. He won't go in there alone. And he's telling us in crucial detail every single night that he's seeing something crawl out of his closet and stand by his window, which is right next to his bed, staring at him. And he says it's trying to eat him. It tells us this every single night. He tells us this every single night. We're all exhausted. None of us, are getting sleep. We're all exhausted. None of us are sleeping well because of this. Then one night, I remember we had some leftover holy water from my other son's baptism. And I thought, at this point we have nothing to lose. So I sprinkled it around his room. I created a whole barrier around his room, basically, just to see what would happen. Like I said, we had nothing to lose. And believe it or not, he actually slept better that night. But my youngest son, who was a baby at the time, had a horrible night's sleep. He started screaming, he wouldn't settle down, he seemed creeped out, just unsettled. And the next day, when I had to take my oldest son, to preschool, he refuses to go. He refused to go, and normally he loved going to school. He usually loved his school so much, but now he's refusing to go. He's saying that he doesn't want to leave his baby brother alone. He makes me promise that we won't leave his baby brother alone at any time, not even to go to sleep. He won't sleep in the bed. I have to stay with him the whole time. He makes me promise. And I tell him, of course, we're going to take care of him. He's safe with mommy and daddy. He's not in any danger. But at this point, we're creeped out. We're all creeped out in my family. At this point, around this time, I had taken a picture of my husband trying to put my oldest son to sleep in his bedroom, holding my son's hand while my husband is laying on the floor. And I didn't notice it at the time. I only noticed it after I took the photograph. But later when we started looking at the picture, we noticed a hand, a clawed hand holding my husband's shoulder as he's laying on the floor holding my son's hand. And that just gave me the worst chills to my core. And it was right around the time that TikTok had a filter that was trending where the colors would change based on the temperature in your house, and it would tell you if your house was haunted or not. So of course I thought, for shits and giggles, let's see what pops up here. And so I take it to my son's bedroom and nothing happens, and then I take it to the closet and of course it lights up like a Christmas tree. And I try to rationalize it away. At this point we're all so creeped out. It had been almost a year at this point. We end up contacting a priest. He tells us that sometimes dark spirits and evil things can attach themselves to objects. He's asking us very detailed questions, very specific questions, asking us if we brought anything new to the house. And I mentioned the doll. I mentioned it in passing. I mentioned that the doll was passed down in my family and that people in my family think it's very creepy and that creepy things happen where this doll is surrounded, but I don't know how much I believe in it. The priest recommends that we give him the doll, and so he can dispose of it properly. He asks if our son is calling this thing by any name, which he is. The priest confirms that the name our son was calling this doll is actually a demon, and he continues to educate us on what this demon prefers. And we try not to say his name. We really do try not to say its name, because the priest tells us that names carry power, and this particular demon has a thing for firstborn male children. And all of this just starts creeping us out. I mean, we want nothing to do with it. We give him the doll, we get rid of the doll, we pass it on to the priest. The priest gives us very specific instructions on what to do and what to say around the house. He gives us instructions to open a Bible to a specific passage and leave it in the closet. And eventually things do calm down. Today, my son is sleeping a little better at night. He's not talking about it every day, but even to this day, that things have gotten a little bit better, he still won't sleep in that room without somebody with him.